I'll call to order the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners agenda and work session to order. And we're just basically talking about ideas that we have and problems and solutions. And no decisions, no voting will be made that I know of. I don't know if you want to kind of start or you.
Well, I'll be happy to kick this off with taking a look at the proposed agenda for our meeting on Tuesday, our regular meeting on Tuesday. This is the agenda that the administration put together. We put things on the consent agenda that we believe are less controversial and not a whole lot of debate required. And then some other things that probably deserve a little more explanation and consideration by the board that follow. I will mention that we do have two presentations, maybe we'll call it three, I'll get to the third one in a minute. But we do have the Sand Hill Center that will be here, and Joe Prater with the Governmental Affairs Office of Charter Communications will be here. And I asked Mr. Prater to visit because Charter Communications, it's known as Spectrum around here, they won the bids to extend broadband internet through most of Montgomery County based on census tracts. They can explain it a little better than I can, but
And you shared that with us a couple of months ago, I believe, too, in one of our meetings.
and Brian Hill has talked about
Maybe
it
it was
as well.
Brian, one of y'all, yeah.
So briefly, RDOF, as it's referred to, is the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. That's federal funds that it's a crazy reverse auction type thing they did, and telecom companies bid on it. And it's for rural census tracts, and Montgomery County has several rural census tracts. And these companies have 6 years to build out broadband, and they get some subsidy from the federal government. They can explain it a lot better than I can, but Montgomery County does have several census tracts that are affected, and you can see the maps if you Google it online, and he will also present some information. But I think it's very important information for our citizens because broadband is a real issue. It's probably an issue for most of us in this room here unless we live in the cities.
Do you know if it will be fiber optics or using regular wire cable?
I can't answer that.
Okay.
I'm afraid to answer. It would be speculation.
We'll ask that Tuesday, ask him.
Yeah, it would be a good question. I do remember looking at some of the statistics on the website about the speeds, and so I'm imagining there is a threshold that you're expected to exceed, but I'll defer to those guys.
Okay.
There's been discussion about the county will receive some funds from federal government, a little over $5 million, and I've heard some discussion in the community about using those funds for broadband. So far, there's some hurdles we would have to jump in. Right now, they're very high hurdles with some state legislation, and there's also some hurdles with this particular program in that even if we wanted to contribute somehow towards these companies to speed them up, the program actually preempts us from doing that. And hopefully he can explain that a little more. But I thought it would be very, very beneficial that this program is out there. There was very little, if any, local government input into this. And it was just sort of one of those things that, well, here it is. But those guys can explain it a lot better than I can. Hopefully they can give us a timeline, but they have 6 years to do it.
Frankie, isn't there potential new legislation that's out there that would change the guidelines for county involvement in
That is correct.
broadband?
There's some proposed legislation. There's been proposed legislation in the past.
I think it's
I'm
a
not
state
gonna count
hot button now, though.
Yeah, I'm not going to count that chicken
Yet.
just yet because usually your private sector telecoms don't want competition from the government, and so that's to be determined. But broadband nonetheless is a very important issue for us to consider.
Yeah, there's a Lincoln guy down on the southern end of Canada that's, he called and was complaining on CenturyLink. I don't know if everybody has CenturyLink or who has it. ideas pretty slow.
I used to have it at home, but it wasn't worth anything, so now I just don't have anything.
Yeah. And one thing I will point out, and I don't know if Mr. Prater will point it out, the RDOF program, we suspect there may be some gaps. There may be some people that are just not quite served. And I think some counties are tossing around the idea, is that something that, you know, some future funding could be dedicated to, is filling the gaps. So maybe a little early to know exactly where those gaps are, but it is something to keep in mind. Have you guys had an opportunity to see the agenda or digest
Briefly
it?
looked at it, it looked like you had a couple of public hearings coming up.
So there are, of course, there are several consent agenda items. If there's something on the consent agenda that we would rather not have on the consent agenda, this type of meeting would be the opportunity to, let's say, let's move this off the consent agenda. As the chairman indicated, there are 2 variance cases. These are quasi-judicial hearings. So there's probably shouldn't say a whole lot about those. The first one is actually several in one, several different properties, but it's combined into one hearing. The second one, without going into much detail, we probably need to put our thinking caps on when this one comes through. It's gonna, when Mr. Putman explains it, it's gonna challenge our thinking.
Okay.
I've never, in over 20 years in planning and zoning experience, I don't know that I've ever encountered one quite like this one.
So may I ask a quick question, not about the 2 cases, but about, I know we had chatter talk amongst us about moving this type of proceeding and allowing the planning board versus
Correct.
so re-putting that there.
Yes.
Where are we with that?
So that would be part of the required, what folks are referring to as the 160D changes to development ordinances.
Mhm.
Those changes are going to the planning board this month.
Okay,
And assuming they make a recommendation, will be coming to you guys in June.
to then be able to say, hey, yeah, we're good.
So that would be the opportunity to pass that legislation that would remand these type issues to the planning board.
So that we're not the decisioning board on that any longer, they would be.
So those are in the works. They have had legal review and are scheduled to go before the planning board.
We had this cabin creek thing not long ago, didn't we?
That was for the
That was the zoning.
zoning
Zoning
from
thing, that's right.
R1 to R3 or something like
I
that.
remember something about
Yes.
it. Okay.
Alright.
And I did indicate a third presentation. I plan to make it very brief, but it is budget season. So I will be presenting,
First viewing, huh?
the first viewing of the budget. I will have the budget document available for you guys, and I will give a bird's eye view of what's included for you guys and the general public. And we can talk about having a similar meeting to this for budget purposes only. I think I've tentatively written down June 1st or something like that. But that date is just suggested. It doesn't have to be that. We do have to have a budget adopted by June 30th, so our regular June meeting would be preferred to have the public hearing and adoption of the budget.
The budget meeting, is that gonna be an evening meeting or day meeting?
It's really up to you guys. It's a special meeting, so it can be, we'll have to make notice of a special meeting, so we can have it whatever time we want to. It doesn't have to be on the 1st either. It can be any time after Tuesday.
First is good for me.
Could it be like our meeting here or?
It could be evening, during the day.
Never works for me. Nighttime, any night, right? Is that what you're looking at, any evening?
Any other questions about the agenda we put together? I want to briefly mention one thing on the consent agenda is the opioid, the resolution approving the memorandum of understanding for the opioid settlement. We've probably all heard a little bit about the opioid epidemic, and now a settlement is close to being reached with governments and the pharmaceutical manufacturers. North Carolina stands to get, don't hold me to these numbers, around $850 million from the settlement, and that's, I believe, the maximum amount, and you can only achieve the maximum if all counties and I believe 17 municipalities sign on to the same memorandum of understanding, and this is it. This would be doing our part. I hesitate to tell you guys how much this may bring to us. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a world-changing amount. It will be some funds over, I believe it's an 18-year period that we could use to address those things towards the opioid crisis. I think Montgomery County gets 0.22% of the settlement. And that's, I believe, over 18 years. So it's not, like I said, it's not going to see our budget go up tremendously, but it would be something that we can use or combine with others to make a bigger impact.
That'd be, I guess, directed more to the sheriff's department for their.
There's, depending on how it's settled, there's a group of activities you can conduct. I think there's some law enforcement elements there, probably. I guess it remains to be seen, how most will go about implementing that. It could be a health department initiative in conjunction with law enforcement, or it could be a multi-county consortium to address the issues. But the first step in receiving funds from the settlement would be all counties agree to this memorandum of understanding.
Well, looks like the agenda's pretty, other than the public hearings, it's a pretty easy agenda,
Yeah.
so.
About those public hearings, that's the way we used to have some meetings, about 15-20 minutes, and it was out, but then during public hearings are crazy.
Yeah.
And I recall at our last meeting, we briefly touched on the TDA bylaws and questions or thoughts moving forward about the TDA. So Misty has given everyone a copy of the bylaws, and you'll see the blue writing on there, that's markup, so you can sort of see what it was and then what it is after we made the couple amendments last month.
Thank you for doing that, Miss.
Okay. I think the things I've always found most interesting about the bylaws is just how the dollars are split out, right? How those funds can get utilized. And of course, we have discretion of that if we ever choose to make changes, but just it's good. I mean, it's good stuff. Back when that board first, existed prior, it used to be like a 12-member board. It didn't have 12 members, but it was a 12-member board, right? They never got it to that capacity, but it was broadly encompassing.
I don't know if that's the one, the towns, we all, had, I guess all the mayors were on that board. I don't know if it was that one or the.
I don't know, I can't answer that question, but it was a 12-member board, but
We
they
were all-
never had it filled with 12 members, so.
We were all on something,
Yeah.
either that or
I don't think it was the
the TDA, what was the other, the chamber, it wasn't chamber, I don't think, what's the other? one?
EDC.
EDC, yeah, I could never keep them straight. There was one of the others, we were, all the mayors at one time was on there. I remember Rick Harris, he was on there, and there were several of those guys.
Yeah, I think EDC, I think that's.
Is that EDC?
If it exists, economic, that would be what Rick would, most likely.
So I briefly looked at the statute and the resolution that authorized us to create the bylaws and the board and levy the tax. I didn't see anything in either of those that would limit our ability to change the bylaws or the funding mechanism. So if that's something the board wants to consider at a later date. I don't see anything that would prevent us from doing so.
What about the other part where, like, these people that we don't know, it's in the shadows?
Being able to get to collect
Click,
the,
yeah. Is anything
I'm gonna bring some-
updated on that part of it?
That's a challenge. It's like a tax. There's been mention of perhaps some sort of registration requirement. I really would like to have more of a legal opinion on a program like that. Still, it's still somewhat voluntary. You'd have to know someone is renting short term to say, hey, you need to come register, if they chose not to do it voluntarily. Sometimes those programs are tied more to development and inspections, because you're looking at it as somewhat of a different type of use. It's not a hotel, it's not quite a house, it's being used somewhere in between. So it's being treated somewhat as a different land use. And it's been, as I understand it, somewhat of a moving target for local governments.
Yeah, I wonder if there's anyone that, and there's actually, I'll have to find the email and I can forward it to people, but there's actually a Zoom webinar, something that talks about how to ensure that because with the increase in some of these people staying in places like Airbnbs, et cetera, how to ensure that you're capturing what you should be. I don't even remember the day, but it got sent, it might have got sent to all of us. I don't know which direction it came from me. But that might be interesting for somebody to sit on. I was gonna send it to Lynn, but Lynn's in Wyoming, so maybe I could send it to Chris Cagle since he's now the head of that. But I wonder if there's another county that deals largely, like when I think of the western parts of North Carolina that have a huge Airbnb base, you know, how do they do that? You know, how do they ensure that they're capturing that tax?
Somewhere along the way, the Airbnbs of the world made a deal with the state to where they collect and remit payment to us, but they don't, what I would call remittance advice, where they would say, this is tax for this house, this house, this house. So we don't know, we're getting something, but we don't know what parts make up that whole. And I think that's uniform across the board.
Well, at least it's nice to see dollars coming in. I mean,
That's
there has been, I had an increase in dollars from when we started collecting this again to where we are now, so.
And tourism is I was actually surprised the amount of tourism we have. In fact, I got a text today from a former colleague at the city of Grammar, who's our planning director there. He is here right now.
Yeah. I get firsthand view of it, of owning a business that people come into that are here in the forest. It's just, I am amazed every week to ask those questions. Where are you here from? What are you doing? And they're in the forest and they're in this. Even like this weekend starts tomorrow is the 24 hours of Uwari. So that is competition that brings people from all over. It's off-road, but other things, but even the Mercantile is one of their spots. They have to come, so they try to get them out and about, but I don't know how many teams they have entered in that, but that's sponsored by BF Goodrich. I mean, it's a big event. It has been for the past number of years, but it brings teams from across the United States that do that. So, yeah, I stand amazed, and there's so much opportunity if we can figure out, how to tap that to get, dollars into, towns, and the county, of course, will then get,
Keep it
benefit
in
from
our
that if
local
they're spending
economy.
money, yeah.
Well, I think it's gonna help out with Billy Hudson starting that campground. He's getting ready to build up there.
I agree too.
So that'll give them a place to stay right there at. I think he's onto something there myself.
Me
Cause there
too.
ain't nowhere to stay really hardly up there.
So it's all exciting stuff. It's right there on the cusp. It's just figuring out how to.
We're only a year in, so we're still,
I know.
we're
Yeah.
still crawling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's nice to see forward movement though.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything else at the moment. Ms. Dottie had a report, I believe.
I just thought it'd be nice, and we talked about if we go to the town meetings to come back and tell the other commissioners, what had happened at the town meetings that we went to. First time I ever been to Cantor's town meeting, but it was neat. Their biggest thing, and it was in the paper this week, is working on their cemetery and trying to get that additional land added to that. And the Foxes were there, they're in charge of that, so they were asking for volunteers to come and do that. Their police chief, Jody Majors, also had a report on some kind of new policies they're developing. He didn't go into detail with that. Some new policies he's developing there for the police department in Cantor. So, the other thing, I had a phone call, and this was in regards to the budget. Somebody else may have had one too. I got a phone call from town Star, one of the town commissioners in Star, even though I'm not Star, but he knows me, so he called about the funds that we get from the public services. It's been going into the county budget
It's our
and
recreation fund.
the recreation. And a lot of the towns are talking about doing things with their parks now,
Yes.
individually. And he made a request, I told him I would bring it to the meeting tonight during the work session, but he made a request, I guess it'd be an informal request, asking for those funds are distributed, that Star would like theirs because they are beginning to work on their park over there.
I think we've had every,
Just
Just
I went
about
to the
every
STAR
aspect.
meeting and he spoke to me about it, but if you've had opportunity to go visit the parks in the entire county, they all need attention. Some of them are, like STAR is in, they're just all run
Oh,
down.
yeah, I know.
So they, need that funding that I don't think it's been allocated
past 2 years.
in 2 years, so.
Is it still sitting there in her pot?
Yes. I'll give you a little preview of my budget. Under the Recreation Support Fund is reported in fiscal year 2021-22, it is expected that the county will receive $97,300 in recreational support funds pursuant to the landfill franchise agreement. Municipalities in Montgomery County provide the overwhelming majority of recreational facilities and programs to our citizens, where the town residents are not. Accordingly, it is proposed to reinstate annual contributions to each of the 5 municipalities to support their programs. Under this arrangement, each town would receive $10,000 each, plus a portion of the remaining balance of the funds based on relative population among the 5 towns. That's my proposal. I did meet with a few of the town managers just to see what their thoughts were. I have not spoken with Cantor, just in passing, and I have not spoken with Star, but that's in my draft proposal now, and just trying to balance facilities, because it's going to cost the same for a slide or a swing set regardless of the town, but then you have your programming, the larger the town is, probably the more cost for your programming. So it doesn't have to be done this way. This is just my proposal, that give each town a set amount and then divide the difference up based on their size.
Well, I have a question or comment about that. What about if you have like in the past, we've sponsored and helped with some of the ball teams.
I was already asked, are we still doing that, not necessarily the team, but maybe some stuff for the field, there was things that
I know,
other
they've been-
dollars.
Well, they have paid for some teams, I
Did they?
think, to go like, if they were in a championship game,
Yeah, to
they
train.
paid like the entry fees and, fees for that.
This proposal here takes every dime of this and gives it out to the towns. Now, the board has the ability to appropriate more funds.
I think
From
we would
outside of
start with
recreation.
if we do something like this, but I'm saying the extra let's don't give it out.
Well, again, so this is $50,000, the $10,000 each, right, because we have 5 municipalities, so that's 50,000, that leaves $46,000 left. I mean, I think we only allocated back when, $25,000 or $30,000 that we set aside?
20,000.
Was it 20 that went to
Just
the
a
Dixie?
little bit here and
See,
there.
we just
What they've
like,
always done in the past, since I've been on, Troy got 50,000 for 3 years.
yeah.
And then, like I say, they were giving it, I don't know how Matthew was doing it, but they were divvying it out to, like if you had a
I
ball
know
team.
they had to fill out an application and come up here.
But how much did we give out for that?
20,000 for the entire fiscal
Yes.
year. They would
much?
submit 20,000.
20,
Just
They would
for-
submit their rosters to me, and they would have to tell what the sign-up fee and all that is. And I have a little thing that I go by, 1 to 50 players gets this amount, 50 to 100 gets this amount, so it's broken down. That's how we've been doing it.
I mean, I don't know what they're gonna be doing, but I would still like to be able to support those kind of, so that's.
And you can. This is just a suggested way of doing it. I was trying to balance
I like doing that though, what they're saying, because this is actually more than they had even talked about.
Right, and
What I had-
that's good for them to get that amount of money, but having it appropriated at that amount, like Missy just
But
said,
is there gonna
make
be
sure
any,
that the ball
um,
teams are supported, because if we leave it up to town, this town may do it and this town may not, but it's gonna fall back on why did the county do it that way, so.
what I was hoping, and we can make this formal with the towns, or we can just do it each year through the budget process. What I was hoping that the towns would take this money and not just
Well, that's
backfill
the other thing,
to add to
Mhm.
or supplement or make fees cheaper. Or I think one of the towns indicated we would love to take fees and make the user charges or the registration fees for our residents cheaper.
Yeah.
Something to enhance and make recreation more
is
available.
that gonna be, kinda like a requirement or something, so they're not just tossing that money out there?
We can make it a requirement.
My thoughts on it were, that was my top thing. And I was saying, propose 5,000. And they would know, and if you go with 10, they would know that they had that money, but they wouldn't be getting necessarily more money because I think they say, we don't know what they're gonna use it for. I mean, like I say, they
We
can
just
very
want them
easily.
to be responsible, because that's taxpayers' money too, and we have to be responsible, so they should be responsible too.
And of course, they have, like us, they have
And
to be
most of them I
audited.
think would, but in some cases, I mean, like with some of the COVID money, some of the things that some of the people did with that. So that shows that they're not always responsible with the money they get when they get extra money.
So I think it would be good if we had the ability with part of those funds that go directly to them, that we designate uses that are available. And then that also takes you from having to keep up with take that, I don't wanna have the dollar sitting there where Misty then has to manage it, cause that's tough, right? I think that's workload on her. But how can we put stipulations where, look, these 5,000 of your 10,000 or whatever the case may be, has to be utilized for.
So again, that's just a proposal on how to divide it up. We actually do not get the funds until, I think it would be early 2022. I don't think it comes in until later in the fiscal year. So we would have between now and then
Figure out
to
how.
work out any agreements or details, but
Me too.
We should have what they just paid us. They should, is that?
I think we just got a check recently
yeah.
for,
But there again too, I'm still wanting to, we just gotta get these kids involved, and I'm just not sure that the towns will do it. I mean, there again, it's just like Troy, they're hiring maybe somebody, but what are they gonna do, But those swimming lessons, I think, you know, that, I know it's a lot of, and like I say, fall back on somebody
You have a
to
pool in
manage it.
Mount Gilead, a pool in Troy,
And one in Bisco.
And see, that would be a chance for those towns, they would make a little more money because if you had 400 kids and they are, you know, they can go to Troy, Bisco, or, or
Troy, Bisco, Mount Gilead.
in Mount Gilead, they could go and they'd have a voucher and then
and if
at
they're
the
coming
end
to
of the
swimming
year or
lessons,
whenever,
get
they
it
could
free.
cash that in and they would be paid for that. I think they're charging about $30 for lessons a week.
So you,
But we would know that that money is being spent for recreation.
This is a good topic to explore, I
is.
think.
It is.
That and then like I was thinking what you were talking about the ball teams, if you go set them, and we just have to figure out how many teams there are. I was gonna stop at Bisco and see how many teams they thought they had. If they had 10 teams, and you give them either $250 or you give them $500 for their part. But
The-
again, you got basketball,
You gotta-
football.
The
Yeah.
thing with that, we break it down into 2 seasons. So we do a spring season that's paid out March 15th and then the fall season September 15th. And so like, I'm trying to think of one, the soccer league for Bisco. They have a spring and a fall league where some only have a spring league. So that kind of, you know,
So these are
changes the
things that
amount
we
they
have
should
to-
get.
You have to work out, does Mount Gilead still have their soccer? I mean, they had a heck of a
Yeah,
program.
Montgomery
and-
Youth Soccer.
Yeah,
And they
have-
never, as far as I know, they never give them any money over there.
Yeah,
They still do that?
And that's why I say
I think, so to recap what you've said, so the swimming piece, I do believe that could be a valuable, you know, that there's money, but that could come out of this extra $46,000 that we had that we didn't allocate, it didn't take much.
Yeah.
That's set aside that each place that has a swimming pool has so many dollars where vouchers could be issued so people can get those lessons for free, right? Because
Well,
I
if
know
you
that's
had-
important, that could be communicated, it could be a county program, choose your location, but we're covering the cost of that. And then that would be part of that $46,000. And then also we just have to come up with, again, just putting stipulations on some of this other money, so they're utilizing part of it for soccer or softball or baseball or whatever else they play. I think we have to be smart with not trying to get where we have to manage it as a county. But we have to put stipulations on,
Right.
this is to be utilized this way. And then some of it they utilize how they choose to, right? Like you said, upgrades or improvements.
Yeah, that's
or-
really necessary because they need the recreational areas up to par so they can be used.
Yeah, and it did, like, you know, like Mount Gilead does a great job on their little part, keeping it up, you know. Some other areas struggle a little more and it's been really bad through COVID, really. I mean, they've really declined because they didn't have even manpower to do stuff, but
Mount Gilead had a lot of volunteers working in their park at
Yes.
one point.
they do. I think that's a lot community driven, but they do a really nice job.
And the other big thing down there is that, what is that ball they're doing?
Pickleball.
Pickleball, yeah.
Pickleball.
whatever amount we decide on, what to say, I just don't wanna turn all of it. I know that's easier.
I
That's
think we
why,
all agreed that we need to do something
Mm-hmm.
in that area.
in the grand scheme of things, most of, I put my city hat back on. Cities, towns do most of the recreation.
yeah.
And a lot of non-residents participate. And those would not be contributed to the taxes in those local governments. In many places, they charge double or something like that for non-residents. I'm not aware that any towns here charge non-residents
you charge
anything
more, I
extra.
think Bisco does, if you come to the pool for out of town versus in town. I can't really remember for sure, but I don't think we charge people from out of town the same thing, or in town as we do
I know
out of
Troy does
towners.
not, their rate's the same
Yeah, I
regardless.
think so.
When my kids were there, it was the same.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they've changed that.
You think, I mean,
Yeah.
as far as what it costs to go to the pool
Yeah,
for
I
in
think-
town.
So I think there's some
I'll have
things
to
to keep
check
in
on that,
touch
'cause
with. I'm
sure.
glad that you
It
have.
doesn't make any sense to do that.
Well, they don't carry ID
I don't know
to
that I
where
would
they
have
live,
one,
because
yeah.
that's how much time
They
kids get
used,
dropped
they
off.
used to keep
But
up
put
with that,
stipulation.
I think when they first started the pool over there.
I'd like to put it to good use.
I do
And
too, yes.
towns are
Yes,
are a little better equipped to do that than we are.
absolutely. We can't manage that, yeah. But I do really like the idea, and Mike, you've mentioned it before, of how do we put a program in place that can be funded for kids to get swimming lessons, because there are a lot of kids that can't afford that, that don't have the ability to pay that cost. And can we set part of the money aside for these pool areas that can cover that? It won't take a lot, because it's not like but that would be a nice incentive. And then this year we gotta figure out, like I know Troy and Bisco's pools are opening regular. Mount Gilead has not made that announcement yet.
They
You know
are.
anything more about
They are
Mount
too,
Gilead?
okay.
No, I haven't.
They are, did they announce that they are gonna, I heard they were only opening, like, not full time.
It is my understanding, but I don't know that for sure. My sister-in-law is supposed to be the head lifeguard over
Okay.
there, so she was the one that was
Okay,
telling
good.
me a little bit about it, but I don't know that 100%.
Yeah, I know just 3 weeks ago, their town clerk had told me, no, their board wasn't willing to
Right.
open it that full. But now with some changes and some mandates, I'm thinking hopefully they will. Good topic. Thank you for bringing that up, and I knew it was on.
Oh,
I knew it was on yours already. I knew it was on your
Like I
topic.
say, I'm still athletic, and like I say, and those kids,
I agree.
they're the main topic we need to focus on.
I'll be quiet now. Is there anything else right now?
STARS meeting, they are getting ready to take down the pink house.
Mhm,
There next to the town hall, and I think the Dollar General's coming in, so they're real excited about that. And then Visco's meeting, they have really stepped up their enforcement of keeping areas clean. So they've done a lot of letters to residents to clean up overgrown areas and
That's what
John,
Peter's
again.
doing too.
a lot of that, so that's really good. That things are being cleaned up.
How long did that meeting last?
It's about an hour.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
a
about an hour.
Yeah, there's supposed to be.
Man, you get long-winded. Is Mary, is she back there again, Mary?
Mhm.
She was, kinda down and out there for a while. Mark Maynard, I think, was doing a little bit of that. Yeah, it usually was about 10 or 15 minutes.
Star was about a half hour and Visco was about an hour.
And I did not go to Troy's this time because I was on vacation, so I didn't get to go to the meeting. It's all right, I didn't good. I didn't know what they talked about.
The other thing I had was where we stand with the food pantry, where we at with them.
Got doors or saw that when I came by just now.
So they're starting to do some of the inside work, which we won't be able to see much, but you can see some progress on the outside. It's, I would say, dried in, equipment is being ordered. Let's say we ordered the freezer equipment, some kitchen equipment. There is concern these days with how quickly you can get materials and equipment, so, but it is ordered. So I'm hoping for a late summer completion.
Yeah, I picked up this paper the other day, I thought it was interesting. It said the food pantry is a joint project between the council on aging and the county and the towns. And are we just the money funder? Is that what we are? And how are they a joint adventure?
I'm not aware that the towns are contributing. Hopefully they can see benefit from it.
Yeah.
But it's mostly COVID money and county money.
And when will we, because again, I know what you're reading from is based on the original statement that came out about the food pantry when it first was put in place. When COVID, the CARES Act money was allocated, and it was talked about that it was meeting and it was joined, all the different churches and communities were coming together to put together a plan to utilize that facility. I know that's not happened, but is that our plan? Are we?
I think the original intent is for the building to serve more than just the food pantry. Cooperative extension was specifically mentioned, and I would hope that it could be more of a community multi-jurisdictional facility, or at least in use, than just dedicated to a single use. And there's gonna be, I would hope, some storage space, there's gonna be a nice kitchen, dining area, so, you know, handicap accessible, up to code, new things, so I would envision maximizing the use of that facility.
And who will oversee that facility?
Great question. Council on Aging is gonna have obviously a major part in oversight. I think the county's gonna have some as well, especially if we, use some of the freezer space, for example, for the Meals on Wheels program. We're operating that out of social services now, and, I think they cleaned out a closet to make room to bring freezers in for the food. And space is limited
Yeah.
in social services to begin with.
And Dottie, you sit on the Council on Aging board. How often are you guys having meetings? I mean, is there a topic of conversation? I've had people tell me that board is kind of dissolved, it's not really even
We
active.
still meet, I think right now we're meeting at least once a quarter and
Okay.
more if need be, because sometimes she calls meetings.
Mhm.
Ruth is the one that's
Mhm.
chair of that.
Yeah,
But there's, what do you mean, we got 12 members,
okay,
I think, on there. And we kinda work with the Montgomery County, was it Planning on Aging too, which is part of PTRC.
is that, Jessica heads that at the college, MCC, is that her name? Heads that board?
Jessica is chair of that board.
Of that board. And I know currently they've not been allocating even any funding for a long time to Council
Well,
on Aging,
We got
correct?
the new
Mhm.
funding figures in, you got a copy of that, didn't you? For this next year, it came through
Mhm.
last week,
Or so,
I
yeah.
think it's when I got the email, and there's an increase, a slight increase for the, Council on Aging, Senior Center, and the,
Good, yeah.
caregiver program, not much, but a little bit.
Because I knew they weren't allocating funds to Council on Aging recently, had not in a while, so it's from that, when
But
they
they
get
get
that
a-
grant, they get a block grant that comes to
Right.
that organization.
It comes
And
out,
then they allocate the dollars, but
right, this time every year.
yeah, she had told me they had not allocated funds to Council on Aging for a little while. So it's nice to see
The
that,
Council on Aging gets funded every month,
but from that group,
yes.
she said no.
All the funding from Council on Aging
Comes
comes
from her?
through that block
Well, that's
grant.
good, that's good.
Except what all that, cause
I don't know.
that's the way it all came out. I don't know why Jessica's saying that.
She said that to me, I don't know
No, they
either.
take that annual thing and divide it, the county, it's handled through the county
Yeah.
finance.
I don't know.
And they divide it out 12 months and it's so much a month.
Mhm.
But it depends on how many units of service they do, which how many in-home aides
Right,
they have, how many meals they serve and all that. And a report has to be done monthly, and once that's sent in, that's when they get the check
Got it.
from PTRC. They don't get it all, I don't think it, did y'all get it all at one time?
I'm
I
not sure, I
don't-
don't,
I can't remember, but I know,
I don't know.
I didn't bring that with me, but
It's
There was
okay,
an
I
email
just,
that came
yeah.
out.
And I believe we have a part-time employee that
Yes.
works as a driver.
yes.
To do the,
picking up at Big
Yeah.
Line, picking up at Walmart and so forth. But it was to be a joint venture with, there was, several years ago, I still got my notes at home, a county-wide food pantry committee,
Mhm.
which handled, worked with Second Harvest,
Mhm.
most Second Harvest, Bisco doesn't do Second Harvest. Through Charlotte like we do, they do one through Fayetteville.
Mm.
And, but everybody gets, the food comes from Second
Mhm.
Harvest except what Russell picks up at Food Lines and Walmart's.
Mhm.
That's produce and frozen
Right.
meats and all that stuff. And he picks that stuff up like every day.
yeah,
And that's why he's the part-time employee there.
to be able to.
And the idea was to have all that food, because that place in Star is leaking.
Yeah, I knew
Has
that
been
was,
leaking
yeah.
horribly.
Mhm.
But was to have it here, more central location. Now Mount Gilly gets their own delivered down there to their food pantry,
Mhm.
they have an actual building down there, but it's the same type food. But was to have it delivered here, and First Baptist picks it up from the delivery that comes in here. but there's a packing list that lists everything
Mhm.
First Baptist gets and everything Council on Aging gets. Council on Aging takes theirs, puts bags together to deliver all the seniors in the
Good.
county.
Good, okay.
And then First Baptist has a food pantry twice a month,
Mhm.
second and fourth, or is it first and third, second and fourth Saturdays. And they serve anywhere from 130 to 170 families on those Saturday mornings from 8 to 9:30.
Yeah, there's a bunch that goes on. I know Tabernacle does boxes of food.
Yeah,
I
and now
know
some of them with the
Yeah.
COVID, a lot of churches have taken on doing it privately and aren't using the food that comes in
Yeah.
from Second Harvest.
Yeah, so again, I think there's opportunity once we have a building, have a structure to figure out how that
But,
is gonna be utilized to truly benefit all of these.
but they fixed it for drive-through, which our church is doing drive-through
Mhm.
when we started that with COVID, where they drive through to pick up and they don't even have to get out of the car. Before they were lined up and coming inside the building.
Yeah,
Our fellowship
that's
hall.
good that they
But
can,
now they drive through
yeah,
and the food's put in their
that's
car.
awesome.
There is an application process, because for everybody that gets food, cheap out food from Second Harvest, has to fill out an application and they have to be eligible, either through qualifying for food stamps
Mhm.
through DSS or completing that application and meeting the income guidelines.
That's good.
Well, do y'all think it'd be good for us to meet with the Council on Aging and see, I mean, like I say, I don't know when we've met with them last, any of the commissioners.
I don't know if Ruthie has met with, she came to one or two maybe meetings, but
She used to, come to all of them when Jackie was here.
you met Ruthie, didn't
I
you?
met with you.
I think it'd be great for her to come and at one, down the road, right, we got a while if that's not till late summer, but to, update this is really what our plan is for the use of this.
But I think, now the kitchen part is not to be, that is to be assigned, and the cooperative extension, I think, is to be over that part as far as if anybody wants to use it. And Rescue Squad is also gonna be using the kitchen part, because they don't hardly have enough room in the place where y'all did the meals, so they're gonna be using the kitchen area part. Mainly what Council on Aging is gonna be is the storage part,
Mhm.
with where the food's stored. And if we ever have a disaster and need to do like a soup kitchen or to do something like that, we still have to go through cooperative extension to use that building as far as the kitchen area. Because they're supposed to be over the kitchen area. But it's not gonna be rented out to families or anybody like that to use. That's not the plan.
And speaking of disaster, a generator, standby generator was one of those
Yes.
added costs.
Right.
And that's big in time of a disaster. Save a lot of food too.
It does save a lot of food.
Well, you just need your disaster.
But
plans to be
anybody-
able to
we
provide,
have-
it would be no good.
I think there's some vacancies on the board now. We just appointed, the commissioners appoints the members,
Yes.
just like they do everybody else. And they just appointed, Margaret Green and Lois Calicut from from Abner, just recently, in this past year, they were appointed.
Mhm.
I forget when my term's up. Mine's up before too awfully long.
They do good work, it's just, we gotta have
So
a
if
plan for
anybody's-
that big old building.
Anybody's interested in wanting to serve on that board, I just fill out an application, put Montgomery County Council on Aging, and send it in to the clerk's office, and then everybody brought up, you can be appointed to that board. But there are bylaws, and that is monitored by Second Harvest.
That's good.
And Second Harvest is probably gonna have to approve that facility before it can be open. They showed up one Saturday at our church. We had just finished serving all the people and we're cleaning up, and here walks Second Harvest in to inspect us. So they come, and they don't tell you when they're coming a lot of times. They walk in and, because your freezers have to be certain temperatures,
Yes,
and they
I
have to
know.
be logged and checked every day. And all that stuff. The food can't be, but it's so close to the walls, it has to be off the floor, you can't put
6
it on the
inches,
floor.
yeah.
I mean, they're tight with their record, and you have to go to training once a year. So it's pretty strict.
It is just like running a restaurant. Follow the same guidelines.
The thing I had was garbage on the southern end of the county. I know that lady's, I just keep
What's
waiting
that
every day
lady's
when she
name?
calls me, Miss Davis.
Has she called you recently?
She ain't called me recently, but yeah, there you
She
go.
called you.
She called you?
It's been a while.
Yeah, well, it's
I've
been a
talked
while
to her a
since she
few
called me,
times.
but, I've been
Is there
waiting for her to
anybody
call.
in the county that does that privately?
Yes, but
And he talked about that, you and your friend, but,
yeah, there are a couple of providers. Well, obviously there's your regular providers that, you know, you can get dumpsters from, Republic Waste, companies like that. There are some folks that are doing some curbside collection out in the county, smaller private companies. I believe this particular individual did contact one of those companies, and it's sort of out of their range, I guess you would say. I think this particular citizen expects a countywide curbside collection, and that's a very expensive proposition. And would be, it's inefficient sometimes in urban areas. In a
Well, then it's
rural
gonna
area.
be a health risk, cause they're gonna have all these rats and all there in their yard. Mike's not gonna go get their garbage.
So,
thought he been trying to get me assassinated down there.
I for this particular citizen, did ask social services if there were some programs that, and there are, if you meet certain criteria, that they will help with, you know, everyday tasks. I believe it was declined.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, she wasn't too impressed with your suggestion. I didn't throw out their names.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I don't have a garbage truck to
Right.
send out, but I do have resources that can get some in-home aid. But
I think you and I alternate weeks. I pick it up one week, you pick it up the next.
And I believe there's a convenience site not too far.
It's about 2 miles, maybe a mile and a half, 2 miles from her house.
And
It's close.
I feel pretty sure that if they could somehow get it there, that our guys would probably help them unload it.
Yeah, well,
Next thing I had was, and I know Dottie's been contacted about it, is the insurance for these retirees. They, you know, their insurance keeps going up, and I don't know what the deal was, if we were supposed to be paying for it and it's increased and we hadn't been catching up, or what so I don't know, that's what I just wanted to bring that up and see how.
As I understand it, we're providing a subsidy.
Right.
And
However, this individual says that when she was hired, in her benefit package, she was told that her supplement would be paid for. That was one of the benefits of working here and retiring from here, was that it would be paid for. No limit as far as amount of money, it would be paid for.
No matter what our subsidy cost,
Right.
that was on just our problem.
Now, I don't have a personnel manual that goes back that far.
We'll have to dig
Yeah,
for
we'll have to
one, yeah.
generally speaking, if it was a benefit in place at the time of employment, you need to provide it.
Cause I've forgotten, the current personnel manual, I think is when it was changed to the 125 per month.
Well, like I say, I guess if you promise that employee something, and they stayed here, no matter when you change the policy, those
That's right.
people prior to that, they should get that.
Yeah.
So if we can check in on that, 'cause she's called me twice on that. I
She's
told her we
called
were
me
supposed to be doing the
Do
budget.
we know about date of hire, range?
Shoot, I don't remember if I wrote it down.
Okay.
No, Frank.
Is that one?
Yes.
Okay.
One that called you too.
Okay.
She retired 30 years in, when did she retire? You remember, Cass?
I don't remember.
It was sometime, she retired sometime between 2012 and 2017, but I can't tell you when.
We're
What was her
talking
name?
80s.
trying to make sure I didn't overlook it. A lot of stuff down here, I don't say what they actually do.
Mine,
So we're talking early '80s, early to mid
I
'80s.
think.
I guess we just need to see when the policy changed and then we know.
And know what the prior
Yeah,
policy
what-
was.
But she started work in another
Gentrification.
agency.
No, I know.
What was that name of that place she started? It was in the ESC office, but it wasn't ESC, it was some kind of work program or something she started. That's where she started, and then she transferred to DSS as a social worker.
Oh, okay.
Was it something called CWEP or something like it? It's something like that initially.
I don't It was
But she was here when I came, and I came in '85.
So, early 1980s.
Yeah. But Renee's got her
I'm not
Bible,
sure.
she's called Renee too.
Okay, so.
So Renee got it.
I'm not sure.
But she said she wasn't the only one, that there were some others too, but she's the only one that's actually called it.
Polly's talked to me, but I don't know when Polly came, she asked me a couple of years, so I don't know, But if we can find that out and just, so we can, I guess, answer her question. And the other thing that I guess the only other thing that I have is, what do you have in mind about raises for the employees? You thought anything about that?
I have, and I do have a proposal that would be included in the budget. The way I've typically approached changes in pay, year in, year out changes in pay, is you update your salary schedules based on some standard. And I've always used the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers. I use the end of the year, it's an inflationary measure. Yeah, that's like a cost of living. And any additional change in compensation is based on performance.
That was the other thing, I guess we just need to decide how we're gonna get that implemented, the performance, cause like you say, if some employee's not, they're
It's
just, I guess.
it's not as daunting as you might think, once you get the program started.
Right.
But if you don't move that cost of living, I think you get behind.
That's correct. If you don't change, if you don't up those pay grades, which ups everybody's salary, you're gonna lose competitiveness in the market.
Yeah.
If you don't give someone the opportunity to move within those ranges,
Based on their performance, yeah.
based on performance,
Same thing.
it doesn't motivate folks. And you will end up in a situation where you have what's called salary compression, where you've got newcomers making what a 5-year incumbent makes, and that is
Which is what
Just
we dealt with.
downgrading to the.
that's
to the-
right. You're not rewarding performance,
Yes,
longevity, experience, and
yes.
it helps a lot of times. I implemented the same structure
Mhm.
many years ago in my prior employer, and what we found is we actually found a competitive edge when compared to some others around us, particularly in law enforcement, where we took in a rookie, we invested in that rookie, and it's very expensive in law enforcement, especially if they are indeed a rookie. And they were able to see, if I do what I'm supposed to do, meeting expectations, performing, the salary goes up and you're rewarded commensurate with your efforts. So it tends to retain folks, because jumping somewhere else, they're probably gonna take a loss. If they did jump, what we found is we had the ability to recruit officers and others that were already trained.
Mhm.
So we didn't have to invest 3 or 6 months of 2 people riding in the same car doing the same job. That's a ton of money.
That's a lot of money.
And but it's a program, and it took that particular program. It takes, the way it's designed, it's 8 years to really get you where you need to be. So it's not an overnight fix.
So, we won't have a performance-based piece of it this budget cycle, because we will?
Mhm.
Okay, So they'll have
That's what I propose.
that would be great if people, you know, from a performance review standpoint, we have
That's right.
those things to be able to look at what those standards are from performance
and
in
it would
each one of these
vary.
roles.
Depending on the position, you wouldn't, you wouldn't grade a law enforcement officer the same as you would a
Absolutely,
nurse,
yes,
or,
job dependent.
that's correct, and it would depend on if you're a supervisor, the criteria. I've always referred to it as competencies,
Yes,
how well you are competent in this particular area. And sometimes there are things in common. If you're a supervisor, whether you're here or there, there's still a competency of how do you manage your people, how do you manage your budget. Those things can be consistent across the organization, but usually it's job specific.
and they'll have common language then, you'll be able to speak to those competencies by role.
Yeah, it also improves your supervisors.
Yes,
Gives you an ability to, particular
Yes.
programs gives you the ability to make notes and journal entries throughout the year, and you're not grading somebody just on the last 48 hours or last week that you remember.
correct, I think that's awesome.
And also you can design it to where, your halo effects and your, all those other effects of psychology, you're not, disproportionately grading folks too high or too low, so. But there are actually programs out there that do that, and the company that provides the one I'm familiar with, we're already using for recruitment.
Wonderful. That's awesome.
Everybody liked that idea and then going to the performance rather than the way we work.
Versus the tier of year.
So part of that type of system though depends on an accurate classification of employees.
Correct.
That's another aspect of it. That is also something I'm gonna propose.
Good.
In organizations our size, it's usually an ongoing thing. You're constantly having your positions evaluated for competitiveness in the market, changes in duties and laws and things like that. And that's, I think it's been quite some time since the county did that.
And that's great.
Just thought of one other thing that happened a while back, and I don't know if we need to change it in the employee manual or see if, what everybody thinks, but if an employee, I guess, gets fired and they appeal that firing. I don't know how everybody feels if they think it's fair for, I guess, other supervisors to come in and go against another supervisor. Does that make any sense? Like, if I fire Frankie and y'all come in and y'all are appealing his process, I know you're not gonna, most of the time, you're not gonna go against me, or you shouldn't. If I'm a supervisor and you're gonna go against me, then that's crazy. But I did see this happen to an employee. They pulled a couple of other people in, and naturally, I didn't think they were gonna go against the supervisor, so he didn't stand a chance, so he might as well have not even appealed it. I don't know how you think.
So there should be and I'm still getting familiar with it, but most local governments have a grievance policy that allows an aggrieved party to go to the next level supervisor, bring their case to them, and ultimately to the manager's office. And me personally, I try not to get involved on the front end of disciplinary action because I am potentially the last call and I need to be objective. I don't need to grade my own work. Once in a while there's a situation where you have to be on the front lines and those are extenuating. But all our employees should have a fair grievance procedure. And in my experiences, yes, most often, if the department head or supervisor does what's right by the policy, it's upheld. I have overturned because they did not do what they should have. They did not fairly assess this person.
Don't have the documentation, those types of things.
Or did not follow the rules. That creates some situations too, but that's what the process is for. back to a performance-based system, often in employee appeals, it's what's documented. Those systems, you know, if you're gonna bring someone to me and they've had stellar reviews,
Yeah.
it's gonna throw up a flag. But if there's a disciplinary action and year over year, there's been performance plans and there's been deficiencies here and there, then there's just cause. And that helps local governments or employers in general if it gets beyond the organization to courts or whatever.
Well, that's just what I was thinking, it's just fairness in it, I mean, like I say.
His
we're not-
process sounds good, yeah.
Yeah. And that's all, cause like I say, if you've not been documented, this guy's a problem and he just makes a mistake, and then you fire him because he made this mistake. I mean, if it's not, you know, life threatening, and, you know, I just think, like I say, if you can take a look at that and make it
Documentation.
fair.
Correct.
You've got it documented. If you don't have it documented, you might as well forget it.
And
Well, that's
two,
like the government, I don't even know if you can fire me with, you know, even if you have it documented.
I'm gonna document it, see my.
but based on two, your approach for a merit-based compensation structure too, I mean, that will put some weight on solid performance reviews and you know, so
That's
you'll
right.
be able to look back over past performance too, that, I mean, there'll be some good things, that'll be good for employees, right, to be able to go through that process annually.
And get the process going,
Mm-hmm,
that employee is waiting for that
yeah,
performance review.
yeah,
Thank you for making that look pretty for me.
yes.
Ain't look like she was confused on what I was talking about.
No, I
but
got
she
it
made
down, what's
You made it look real pretty, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
Like, what are other supervisors doing in there? But
Yeah.
up in, yeah.
But yeah, it was, you know, and like I say, it was a bad situation, but I didn't think the employee should have been fired, but I didn't really have a water treatment plant.
And what the
It's
process you're
instant.
talking about really gives ownership to the
Yes.
employee, gives them a reason to perform, and it gives fairness.
Yes.
That there's a level of expectation that they can be aware of and count on, so that's important.
Yeah, and you also have cases where in small organizations, you have a flat hierarchy, meaning there's not a lot of upward mobility. You may have a department of one. And, you know, part of, you know, retaining employees is keeping them motivated. Even if you don't have upward mobility, you have ability to progress within your own job.
Based on, yeah. Gives you reasons to go out and learn more and do more and improve your skill set. Yeah,
And
that's
I think
awesome.
that's a good thing too, is if at all possible, if we can promote within rather than,
And that is preferred.
Yeah.
Succession planning should be a concern of the county. It should be a concern of most local governments. But we're not a huge organization. We have a good number of employees, but there's not a lot of folks waiting in
There's not a lot of depth
line.
in a department.
That's
yeah,
correct.
Right.
So succession planning is very important. And in local government, in the blink of an eye, 5 years go by. And it's,
well, that's where I was thinking too about what you were talking about. If the supervisor is training these and making sure that, hey, when I do go, somebody is here to kind of,
that's
you know,
right.
they're qualified to move into that position rather than.
Succession planning is the proper word. I used to call it hit by the bus plan. What would happen
Yeah.
if this person got hit by the bus?
And that's constant, that's a constant evolution of doing that, of succession. And cross-department too, right? So
Yep.
you don't have to stay within your same linear chain, there might be opportunity to cross over
And
to.
I've always been a proponent of if there is an opening and there's someone from another department, they get
Yeah, that's right.
sometimes they get the first shot.
Yeah.
In years past, where it was more competitive and we had openings, our HR department would open it up to internal candidates first.
Mhm.
And if there were no viable internal candidates,
There you go.
then it goes outside. Right now, almost everything's going outside. And by necessity.
Yeah, but, you know, so it'll take some years, again, some of this is.
It doesn't
It's-
happen
it's
overnight,
right.
and chances are, the full effect would not be realized until I'm gone.
I don't know where, it's all right, they don't even need to do that.
It does,
It
that
takes
takes
years.
years
So
to
you can't go
that
in
system, yeah.
and do it all at once, you can't afford it. And it's not fair to do it all at once.
Well, that's good, that's very good.
I thought of another thing too. Like
Who are you
seriously,
being off now?
is, we talked about it when, HR lady, she come in, that was her birthday.
Renee?
Yeah, Renee, if, like I say, sometimes benefits don't cost you a whole lot and they mean a little bit. But I was wondering about, how everybody, if they thought we give your birthday off. It was just a
We
thought.
used to do that when I first came here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, just like, if it can be done, I mean, they might have to take another day, but if they can be given off on their birthday, the
No.
supervisor can work it out,
That was one of the benefits when I first came.
just a thought to, look around, I mean, it's
You
kind of.
can. I would prefer that be codified in the ordinance
Right,
Yeah,
or
Yeah.
in an annual ordinance,
Yes.
something like that, because
that adds up.
it adds up, but there's also, is it compensable
Mhm.
if you leave, if you don't take the day off? There's
There are
some
things.
considerations in leave time.
we just worked that part out, I just brought the idea.
You can, the state, for example, on occasions, rather than give raises, they've given, okay, we're gonna give you an extra week off. And that could be done, on a one-time basis, but if it's something you wanna make a recurring thing that employees can count on, it probably needs to be codified.
Well, one of the things, like I said, I had been thinking about that appreciation
Thank you.
lunch or dinner or something for us, I'm glad you did that, and
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing, I've been talking a little bit, but I don't say enough to get the
Thank you.
vocal cord going.
Anybody else?
But, another thing I was thinking of
Good.
was along the same lines, is like I said, it's just to try to get, I guess, the morale of the employees and the ones that kind of wanted to participate was, I've been seeing it in some of the businesses that's, like, say for Halloween, they kind of dress up and you award them some kind of
Aren't
time
you a
off.
big idea dude today?
I'm just
I
it
tell
sounds
you.
like I'm a real big giveaway, don't it? But it's just, like I say, maybe get the employees a little more.
I think there's a lot of stuff you can do intrinsic value, I think is what
You're,
he's getting at.
well, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it's not just about the extrinsic rewards, the pay.
Yeah.
For example, it's about the work environment, it's about, how folks feel when they're at work. I've always been a little more loose in the office and understanding, and we wanna have Jean Day.
Mike, you
So,
were on
Gene,
board when we
Roscoe,
did all
get
this
over here.
stuff. Cause we used to get a luncheon at Christmas too,
That was another one I was thinking about, I had heard, that.
and then they started giving us another day off for that Christmas holiday and not doing lunch, cause so many people would go to lunch.
Yeah, that's
They used to give us, like one day, one year we went to Yard Point, we had several down at the lodge. But they would feed all the county employees.
Yeah, I do believe there's some things, and you even talked about that when we interviewed you, right, about that is extremely important to you and how you build unity and morale within your organization, so, I think it's great, it's on the top of your brain, but I believe it's on yours too, so I think we'll begin to see some of those things. Tell Mike to submit a form of all his, all the things.
The other one, what Dottie was talking about, someone of the employees was telling me, they used to could wear jeans, like on Friday once in a while or something, but then it was cut out. Stuff like that, I think,
Get
unless you're
Friday was
working in a
June Day.
position where you need to be
Yeah.
looking professional, not looking like you just come off from the.
Not going to court that day.
Yeah.
I just think, I think there's,
We've done a little bit of that so far, just testing the water.
and I will say, because not everybody was in the room when I first said it, but yesterday was the employee appreciation luncheon. And these guys, anybody that came and were able to see what they did, but those boxes were put together so good. I mean, it was, yeah, so.
I did that with the wrong film, I didn't need to be in the food industry.
No.
I could tell by looking at them, they were a little stressed, but it was.
They must have watched, UR Fire Department, they did kind
Oh,
of the
for their
same thing.
drive-through?
Yeah, and you just pulled around the building,
It
and you
was
said what you
awesome.
wanted, and pulled up a little bit, and they handed you food, and you were gone, man.
That was awesome, and they sold out so quickly, but yeah, you guys did a great job yesterday, and hopefully I know the employees that came in my coffee shop this morning to get coffee were very appreciative of that yesterday.
Everybody came in grinning yesterday, they came in when I was there, everybody I saw come in grinning.
They were happy.
We intentionally planned it for a non-payroll week,
Uh-huh.
and in the middle of it.
So they needed money.
So
So
they
there's
needed a
some-
meal, needed a meal.
Well, there's something to look forward to
Yes, yeah,
on a payroll
Off
week,
week.
I think that was awesome.
I heard the
Did you
employees
make sure
paid,
that-
they played weekly,
every other week.
every week.
My mind is,
And
I
I,
could,
I'm not gonna take any credit for yesterday, it was Misty and Larry Leak.
Larry, make sure you tell Larry how much you appreciate it too, because man, he was working.
He was.
It sure did smell good, when you were standing there at the.
Well, that's the way when you cook pig,
Y'all didn't get to come,
like they
did
used
you?
to cook it in town,
I did.
fire department. Like I say, everybody could smell it, so they couldn't
You
help
should
it, go
have
get
one
some,
come
you know.
over. It was,
It was
I
over at
only got
one, right?
15 minutes.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It's such a
I got my
I
second
almost
shot
called and
yesterday.
said,
Oh, okay, so
Should've
you
had
could have
Sean.
gotten something even later.
But it was good, I couldn't eat all mine.
Kay, you got anything from Mount Gilead down there that you hearing the drums beat on that we need to?
Not that I know of right now.
I do know, just because I only saw it online, but Mount Gilead at their meeting presented their whatever, how many year plan. So they have it's a bit like if you go out on a maybe Speckled Paul's site or whatever.
Is it their land use?
Well,
plan?
it's part of that, but it's a massive comprehensive, it's pretty interesting to read through some of those things.
Disco was doing their land use.
Yes, yeah. And this was more than, it was something they had started back before COVID, not just land use, but this other kind of long-term strategy growth and like a part, just a number of things. But so, that's out there, that it's viewable, but I think it was on Speckled Paul's site. The link to it was in their newsletter, I believe, because I looked through it, but I didn't read it, I just kind of.
Yeah, I kind of
Skin.
missed their meeting. I think we were here when they.
Oh, yes, you
Yeah.
were, yeah.
Mhm.
But I follow It's Speckled Paul's newsletter, so that keeps me abreast of all
Oh,
things
yeah.
Mount Gilead, so.
Yeah, they're real good about
Mhm.
posting what's going on.
They are.
I haven't been to the Board of Education meeting yet, I just thought about y'all trying to trick me, they want you to wear a mask down there.
Oh,
You don't
yeah.
have to wear a mask anymore.
Not
We're
now.
gonna have to hold off a while, then we'll. You know, we won't bother with it.
I have one more thing I almost forgot, because Mike forgot it.
I probably did, shit, the hell, how much more do you want me to tell?
I don't know how much you've heard, or if you've heard anything else about it, is the Veterans Office.
I've heard lots of good things.
But one of the things is, the Veterans Office was put under DSS.
Hmm.
Has nothing to do with DSS. And I know DSS is supposedly supervising, but, Marcia has done a fantastic job since she has been.
She has.
She goes to all the training that she's get, because she has to get so many credits every year. And if you hear the veterans talking about this, she has been approached by Stanley County, because theirs is retiring this year.
And we were the loser.
She has been approached by Stanley County, because I got, copies of some letters that some of them sent, asking her to come to Stanley County, because they were, some of the veterans up there came over here,
Mhm.
and they were talking about how much she helped them.
Yes, she has done amazing work.
But her big thing is, she doesn't want to leave Montgomery County. She just, and it's already been done as far as naming her director,
Yes,
but there needs to be, I think, some kind of
I
salary
agree.
thing.
So that would be part of what you would propose with a classification study, you would evaluate, it's,
Because she works so independently.
yeah,
She has been threatened several times with people with PTSD.
And how do we move her out from under reporting up through DSS too, right?
We
Can we do
just
that?
talked to
I
Frankie.
thought
Yeah.
that had been changed.
Because I know, I mean, that has been,
That has been mentioned, from
I
a
thought
couple
that had been
different angles.
and from veterans who have said, that
But
feels weird to me, yeah.
It's just one of those that still trying to fill the organization out, and a lot of times I may not understand something, but I know, I've been around long enough to know there was probably a common sense reason for it at the
The
time.
reason was, at the time, was because, I don't remember if it was the one previous to her or the one previous to the previous one, or anyway, there were a couple of people that were hired at that time that there was not a good, they were more or less working on their own, but they did not do. And so it was made, decision was made to put that position under a supervisor.
She does a lot of things that she doesn't
Oh, yeah, she
necessarily
does
have
those
to
little
do.
She
bags
does.
for the veterans and
My,
everything.
when my father-in-law passed away, the only thing he had asked for was a, veterans service.
Mhm.
And because of COVID, the normal people were not doing it.
Right,
And she worked and worked until she found a group to
That
come
would
and
come
do
to
it.
it,
So it was
so
amazing.
that's just something to throw out there.
of course, that's a personal issue we would take offline.
It is, it's one that speaks to, since it's been so long since you've
Mhm.
taking a look at your positions and your duties, a typical process like that would be your management saying what the expectations are, but it's also an employee filling out a questionnaire and submitting, well, this is what I do.
Mhm.
And then that third party puts those together and says, well, this is the duties and this is how they should be
She
compensated.
loves her office,
She does.
and it is,
Yes.
I mean, being down there and the remodeling that was done, she loves that.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been down there, you need to go, cause it is really nice. She used to be down under
Yes.
Cooperative Extension, didn't have a bathroom, she had to go upstairs to use the bathroom. And handicapped veterans
Had issues, yeah, could be.
time.
Yeah.
But now she's downstairs, they've remodeled that whole area.
Looks
She's got a
really good.
nice office, and even the, what's the group that, Russell and them have? Whatever that group is called, they provide coffee down there, so if the veterans come in, they have to sit and wait. There's a TV down there, and they can have coffee down
Cause I
there.
provide them cups, I do that, but I'm like,
But it's
Get those
really neat now. And there's bathrooms there, and it's handicap accessible, so.
I'm sorry.
it's okay.
Cause I think, I mean, our veterans deserve.
Yes. Yes.
She's good. I got a letter on my desk now from a faithful citizen.
So, but
Um,
that's,
When, I was just trying to ask Kay about it, but when we were, meeting with the NAACP, a question came up about, the residents that live in, southern Troy are getting letters monthly from people wanting to buy their property since the 4-lane was finished. And so there's some concern about the legitimacy of the companies and whether, they're trying to take their property unwittingly.
Yeah, I would be suspicious of an unsolicited.
Right, and that's what we recommended, that, you know, that is a suspicious action, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention because they wanted to know if we were aware that that was
Wasn't
going
aware
on.
of the specific South Troy letters, but occasionally I would get a letter from someone offering to buy my property, particularly if it's got timber on it.
oh yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
You'll
I
get
get
this
those.
cold letter.
And I think they were concerned with it being the proximity to the new 4-lane and how that land could be used. So it's something to be aware of.
Yeah.
Definitely wanna protect our citizens if we can.
Yeah, I would be very suspicious. Me personally, if someone called me, I would say, if you don't know this person, you haven't solicited an offer, just file it away in the trash. Yeah.
You know, we talked about cleaning up and the county and so forth a while ago with some of the different towns. The county's talked about, you know, cleaning up too. That's been one of the things on, that we've talked about. And somebody mentioned that area over just this side of the river where that supposedly campground, trailer park, whatever it is. If you realize how bad that looks when you cross that bridge coming into Montgomery County and you see all that. I don't know what our ordinance says about it, but that's something that I think we need to look into.
Where's this at now?
You know, when you come across the bridge coming from Mount Laurel,
Mhm.
and it's that trailer park right there.
Right there by the boat
It's like
landing.
a campground.
Yeah.
It's been there a long time. I believe it was the Lemons family that used to.
Yeah, they were the ones I think that started it, and it's turned into an eyesore. If they have nothing else, they need to put a barrier or something, but they need to do something if we're trying to promote.
Well, I guess we need to see what our ordinance says, you know,
Right.
so we know how we can. if
So there's a
any-
couple of approaches. Sometimes unsightly isn't illegal. It's unfortunate, but
Right.
there's usually nuisance abatement type remedies. And then there's minimum housing type remedies, which somewhat go hand in hand. The minimum housing, it doesn't take much to meet
Yeah.
minimum in a lot of cases.
Right.
Through the years, I've been on projects where, wow, but it meets the standard. Sometimes there's voluntary compliance. But
And I don't know how much we even have about those types of things in county, there's quite a bit in municipality ordinances, but when it's just county,
It started out as a temporary campground, didn't it? And then
I am
it's
so
turned
sorry, but I do need to go. I got a
Thank you for
situation
coming.
with my grandson.
oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you for coming, Kate.
All right, all right,
Hopefully it was beneficial.
Okay, thank you.
all right, I'm sorry.
You get
the minimum, what people call the condemnation process, you get a lot of calls, I've received a lot of calls through the year, just go out and tear it down. Well, the process isn't to tear it down
Right.
always. Sometimes that's what you have to do. The process is to correct the deficiency. So sometimes that means going in and fixing something. It may not fix the blight, but it would fix,
Minimum housing out there.
I don't know,
well, there's state standards for minimum housing, but
they're not hard, yeah,
they're not that
It's not hard to meet.
Yeah, they're not hard to meet. Yeah, and a lot of times something unsightly does meet the standard. Campgrounds are a little. I don't have a lot of experience with
They
those.
wouldn't even let me put a camper on my land.
Ask
And
for
it's gonna be back
forgiveness.
in the woods.
Ask for forgiveness.
Then
The,
no, you can't do that.
on that zoning up there, you know, that we did, you know, we made some recommendations, you know, that they put some stuff in,
Mm-hmm.
where you know, fencing so it couldn't be unsightly seen and stuff like that. So I guess, you know, if you catch it early, you can make,
As it
Yes.
develops is
Right.
the
As it
best
develops.
time. Going back to something like the campground and trying to attack it from a land use perspective, they would have grandfathering protections, ex post facto, protections, because the law would be created after their action. So it would be really tough to do it from a zoning standpoint, almost impossible.
I just thought I'd mention, see if there was anything that could be done.
I mean, an inspector can go visit if some folks are living there, and if it is indeed some sort of nuisance, harboring pest, or there's the possibility, those processes, unless it's just really, really, really bad, those processes can drag
See, I
out for a
thought
long
if the
time.
road came on that side, it might solve part of it, but it didn't. It came on the other side.
there's a property there close to Bisco, close to Walmart on the left, what is that, Hamilton's, I guess, is it Hamilton's, that barbecue place, the next place on the left? I had some family members to ask me, wasn't it something we could do? to make
About
them-
that,
Yeah, make them do clean up, but then the owner has passed away, so I don't know who it belongs to now, but it's pretty bad looking, I mean, it's cars and weeds and grass and looks like
See,
a
it's not in the
jungle out there.
town limit, and so you don't have the same.
Yeah, towns generally have a little more stringent, regulations as far as nuisances, because you're densely populated, and disease carrying rodents are right there at somebody else's doorstep in a city.
Yeah, it might be in their
That's
ETJ
why
or
I'm
something.
scared of Stanley County.
One thing I thought of too there was, you wanna tell us anything about the chiefs meeting you went to with the fire department? I heard you got over there.
Yeah, I did meet with the fire chiefs a few weeks ago in Star. Some folks reconnected with from the past. Misty's uncle, who used to coach me in baseball.
My husband was at that meeting, he said he saw you.
Was he? Okay. Some folks I didn't recognize,
He
and
did say,
some
he
folks
just said, just him, he did say, thank you, was that the chief's meeting?
I sort of kept quiet, but introduced myself to those that I didn't know. And, good group of folks, and volunteerism. We are indebted to volunteers.
Mhm. Yes.
They save us a ton of money. To staff a fire station, one station, you're talking about
Yeah,
$500,000 a year in just
there's no
people.
way.
I don't think people realize that.
No, complain about some things that,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
and we have to go to all paid fire departments everywhere, cause if once you do one,
yeah.
the others they gonna say, well, we won't be paid to.
No.
I had the question raised this past weekend by an acquaintance about what would happen about the volunteers, and if what the county just went to an all paid. I said, do you realize you can't afford it?
Yeah.
There's no way. Taxes would have to be skyrocketed.
You're talking 10 stations, $500,000 apiece.
Yeah.
A year, and it grows.
No.
It's $5 million, and your penny gets you a little over 300,000.
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, I hadn't talked to him, but, I think we appropriated him 35,000 just right off the bat, each, I guess, budget year.
Mhm.
And they work off of that, and then there was a plan to, I can't remember how far it was down, to buy a truck, or buy several trucks, So I guess that's working for them okay. I hadn't been to one lately, cause they just,
I didn't hear any
comments about that.
No, not specific to that. There will be one fire department that is going to request additional funds through the fire tax district.
Okay.
And I did meet with that fire department. I'm spoiling all my surprises, aren't I?
Okay.
They do have some needs. I don't have a good answer to help them meet those needs, aside from conveying that maybe there's some adjustment to the rate in the
Okay.
district.
And Candor has taken occupancy of their new fire department, haven't
Who?
they? Candor.
Yeah, that's nice looking.
Mhm.
They were doing a fundraiser this past weekend, wasn't it?
they did some kind of,
Yard
clay,
sale.
yard sale, they had a
The
golf
ladies,
tournament a few weeks
what it
ago.
was. I forgot about
I
it.
saw it on Facebook.
And they did do a
Golf tournament.
golf tournament, and it filled up quick. Cause some of my guys were going to do it and couldn't get it.
Yeah, I still am, bitter about the way they did that, the tax rate, I guess was 62 cents. And I'm sure it was the commissioner said, well, we can't raise taxes. So they come in with this 2-cent fire tax. Well, you gotta have fire service, yeah, so they slapped that on, and the citizens in Bisco, they already had fire service, they didn't care whether they had a county fire truck in it or not, they were there to serve the citizens, but, so they got, I guess it's almost triple taxed, county tax and then that, and there was another one, so they were paying 3 times for fire service. People in the county like me now are getting, all we do is pay one time, we're at 2 cents, but they say it's an expensive.
It's very expensive. Public safety is expensive. It's not something you can, other than maybe EMS service where you can charge the end user. It's hard to go to someone's house and issue a warrant or serve a warrant and then say, oh, by the way, you owe me $1,000 for this service.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
No.
Fires, occasionally fire can get some reimbursement for some hazmat type incidents, maybe a donation here and there, but your everyday run for a wreck or little brush fire.
Yeah.
It's a service,
It is.
and it's,
I think there's been a couple of trucks that wrecked out on the bypass, so like you say, got that hazmat.
Yeah.
I guess the insurance of the trucking company paid for the cleanup and all.
fire is expensive. Your ladder truck's probably gonna run you $1.25 million these days. A regular fire engine, 600,000.
600,000, yeah.
Garbage truck, we talk about curbside collection,
Can't wait.
that's 320 grand these days.
Is Troy doing Troy Fest this year?
Are we gonna do it? Are we gonna participate in it? You know, usually the commissioners ride, but we hadn't done it so long,
Right,
I
yeah.
hadn't done anything.
Troy Fest is happening and there's big, and Gillian's doing their fall festival, Troy's doing their,
Candor
Bruce
Council,
Hughes and Music Review Candor canceled the Peach Festival. But yeah, so Mount Gilead's doing their fall festival, Troy's doing their fall thing, they're doing Troy Fest. And in downtown Troy for Juneteenth, which what's that date, what's the date, 10th, right? So the Juneteenth march that's happened. So this year, my understanding is it's gonna be a big event. I mean, it's not a town event, but they're gonna shut down Main Street like they do for Troy Fest. There'll be vendors, there'll be, so a lot
June
of,
when?
I think that's on June 10th, isn't June 10th?
It's
June,
around
it's the
that.
10th or the 15th, I can't remember, but that whole, event, and so that's gonna be big in downtown Troy. And then not this Saturday, but next Saturday for the communities and schools, they have the big 5K color run. You ever had a color run 5K?
Uh-huh, yeah.
Which is where you go through paint stations and you get colored up for this
Wear a
event.
white shirt and
It'll start at Troy Elementary and end at Troy Elementary, but that's next Saturday, so
How do
that,
you register for that? Do you know?
look at, pull up communities and schools, their Facebook page, and it'll be on there. You know what, I bet you I have an email from Shaylin too, that I can forward to you, but yeah, so, and I think she's even emailed me tonight, and I saw a little thing on here, let me see.
Matt Gill and Troy both having their fall thing on the same day?
No, I know Troy's will be that Saturday right at Halloween. I don't know the date, let me look up to you the date.
there needs to be a website where you can go, like, I don't know, it's
Oh,
kinda
we
hard, like
talked
say,
about
county, when you follow everything, but
We
you know,
talked about
somebody
having some
listing all
kind of,
this
yeah.
stuff that's
Well,
going on.
right when the TDA, when the Discover URI, that website will be up, all this stuff will be able to be listed on that website that Saturday group is putting together, so all that will be part of it. Troy's will be the 30th of October, that Saturday, and I don't remember Mount Gilead's date, it's prior to that, so I don't know if it's the
Okay,
16th or somewhere around there.
cause last time I got to Troy, it was shut down and raining.
Yeah, no, it'll be, well, they even did it this past year for Halloween, you know, and they did the trunk or treat on Main Street, so that'll all happen again this year, so there's some really cool things that will happen, but I think that color run will be, it's the first time, and hopefully that'll become an annual event for, communities and schools as a fundraiser. They already had all their paint station sponsors but it'll stop and start at Troy Elementary, I don't remember the route, but there's a 1K or a 1 mile maybe, or one, I don't know, and then a 5K.
Is it a walk run?
Yeah, oh yeah, so it's family. It will, it's super fun if you've never done a color run, it's so fun.
Just something else I was thinking about, and it's this stuff that's been going on over the nation, is all this rioting and stuff. I know we've not been affected by it, but I don't know if it's something we can mention to the towns. I don't know that it would affect the county that much, but honestly, I think if you can protest,
Thank you.
but they should be hours. And then no protesting after dark. I mean, you know, you sundown, you should be through protesting, because in the darkness, that's when all these stores have been burnt and broke. And so I don't know, like I say, if we can talk to the towns when you go to those meetings, maybe mention it, see if there's either an ordinance they can adopt, or the county needs to do something. But I think, you know, from say 7 in the morning, sun up, to a couple hours or hour before sundown, you gotta be cleared out. And, cause like I say, when you get people in the darkness, that's when it looks to me like all the trouble has begun. So I've just been thinking about that part, that before we get in that spot. And another thing, I wish we could have some training, or help provide that training for law enforcement and for kids, that, hey, this, you can't, you've got to respect, and you can't be, I guess, fighting with officers. It's never gonna end up good, And I just think that they're missing that somehow, because I mean, somebody with a gun and a thing, and you're trying to fight with them, and I know, they're on drugs sometimes, and it's that's just what happens, but I think the kids, they need to know that there's authority, and you need to kind of follow it, or it may not turn out. I just hate for us to lose anybody, and I know the police officers don't wake up, I'm gonna shoot me somebody today, they that's a terrible thing, and so I know they don't want to. If everybody behaves and follows the rules, I mean, everybody will go home at the end of the day. And I don't know if that's, like I say, if that's something we can.
Well, let me tell you what my husband is doing for the early college. So first of all, there's all kinds of summer camps that happen through the MCC, so my husband will do some of their summer camps. But for the early college, because they go back to school, but then they won't have teachers for a little while, so he's doing a program for them. I don't know all the details, or I'm broadcasting stuff that might not be set in stone yet, but they are actually, for that group, he's doing a class that's just about that it not only gives you, really interaction, gives you access to all different types of situations, first responders, law enforcement, but then also shows you that too as an opportunity of a possible job, right? So it gives you that side of it too, but then also show you the side of how you respect and respond to each other. So I don't know all the details, but it's a super cool program that he's working with the early college to put in place for all the students there, whatever age. Yeah, so I think it's a great idea, but
Yeah, I
they
think
felt just needed, right? How you give people exposure and to work collaboratively together. And
the same thing with the DARE officer. I don't know what grade they cut that off, but it's, how do they go from, fifth grade? So, what are the kids getting from that point on when they start really getting introduced to drugs? What are they getting
Who's the
to?
new DARE officer?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Is that Bud's car out front down there?
I'm
I
guessing it
saw it
was
yesterday, and I wondered if they had parked that, because I saw something on Facebook where they, I guess, recognized him.
If y'all have not been to West Montgomery,
No, we tried to stay away from that place over there. We didn't like it over there.
well, I made a trip over there today to get
to buy something, yeah.
yes. That school, it almost makes you want to cry. It looks so horrible over there. Honestly.
Every time I always went over, I got beat down, so I didn't like going over
They
there.
had all the East Montgomery stuff over there too.
Did Oh, you talking about the
Remember
trophy and
sports
stuff?
memorabilia?
Yeah.
I don't know where that stuff was at for East Montgomery. I mean, they used to have it outside in the
Well, that's
hallway,
all
the
at
gym.
West Montgomery.
Everything's at West for sale.
But do you know what? I asked for stuff for my year. There's nothing in there for my year at all.
Did y'all not do anything, or just
Matthew
y'all
was
want to
there, he
get
said it's cause I was so old. But there wasn't anything for that far back. I think I did see some stuff for the 70s.
You would think they would have something down at the new school, the old history of the two
I
schools.
can't believe they had all that stuff there. Have you been over there to see?
I've seen
I
pictures.
saw
I didn't
pictures.
see Sean anywhere either, cause I looked at all the pictures.
Yeah, I saw
Of course,
lots of
they
photos
did.
of all the stuff going, wow, that's a lot of stuff.
It must have been most of them west, cause I don't know that East had that much. I don't know
Oh,
what,
yeah, the East had a bunch of stuff over there.
yeah, I
It's
just,
a lot.
I don't know who had it, wonder who
They
had it.
had it in storage, I'm sure.
It was, well, I bid on one thing and then there was one other thing I would have bid on, but I was afraid it was gonna be too expensive. I wouldn't bid on it.
Well, you can always bid what you're willing to pay, and see if
I
it wins
know,
it.
but I probably couldn't even touch it. It was
Oh.
the middle point of the warrior head. It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Is it kinda like those things that we go to sometimes where you just put the number on the card, you know, it's like
Yeah.
number 12, $250.
Yeah, and then you drop it in this big box.
Well, they just usually left the ones I go to, you just see it,
No, you
somebody
don't-
has bid it.
You don't get to
out
see
there.
anybody else's
You don't get
bids.
to
Close
see anyone
bid.
else's bid.
Close
Yeah,
bid,
close
yeah.
bid.
Everybody's getting antsy, and you're tired of hearing me come up
No,
with-
I
and keep
know
talking.
things that we have outstanding, we have to talk about tonight, but,
Mhm.
cause I even had somebody ask me the status of Hallwanger, where it was with them being listed process. I said, I don't know, it's in the works, so stay tuned, so when it's
We-
ready.
The agreement with Pfeiffer,
Mhm.
that we approved, they have now approved it, and we've got to, get the transfer of their property to us, and then we can
I
move forward.
said, it's in the works, when it's ready to go, it'll go,
Mhm.
and then.
Now, there is nothing stopping any person in this world right now from making an offer to us.
Okay, well, that's good, we need to,
Dana
that's
wants
stuff we
to
should,
buy it.
no, I don't wanna buy it.
If I make a bid, is that insider bid?
You definitely couldn't vote on it.
I do not want to
What
buy
about
it.
the other one, the Samarkand and, the East
East
Montgomery
Montgomery.
sale?
So I did forward the resolution to them. They are, as I understand it, they've had some of their engineers, I think they've probably went through by now. And they have ordered an, I'm gonna say ordered an appraisal, for lack of a better word, because that goes through the Department of Administration. So I don't know whether that's happened yet, but they are going through those preliminary processes.
Plus I know they have to work pretty quickly too, from a budget standpoint for
Yeah,
themselves.
they have to work quickly and there is no guarantees.
Right.
It's still gotta go through appropriations.
Yeah.
And a budget has to be approved and then signed. I don't think states had a signed budget and it's been some trouble.
Yeah, not that
Getting
they can't
agreements.
get dollars allocated without a signed budget, but they need it within that process, right? That's what Rick had
Yeah,
said, they
and
can
there is a
still.
timing aspect for us as well. The longer it takes,
Mhm.
the more maintenance, upkeep is required, and it's a lot to keep up.
Mhm.
We only have two folks.
I need some keys to that place, I need to play some basketball. I need to utilize that court while it's still
When are they
available.
gonna have the shooting range finished, or whatever it is over that business?
I don't know, they didn't say anything about it at Bisco,
No.
Cause
it
they
looks like
sure-
it's coming along.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, that company that's coming in to do it, you know, that's what they do, so.
they sure cleared off over there.
Mhm.
I just went that way.
It's gonna be a big facility.
I wondered
gonna
if
be
there was
awesome.
any kind of,
Yeah.
a master plan on how they wanted to do stuff, cause I don't know where they put that, if that's right in the middle of where a road needed to go, or, you know, 'cause like I say, that property comes right on in and goes in behind my house and all out through there. And that's another thing is, I guess we need to find out if those people are still on board. Say if General Motors decided to come tomorrow, they dissolved that group or whatever, I mean, wasn't it? Isn't that what they did?
Yeah, we got that communication not long after you were here, where that dissolved that group that was had the, what's it called, when people are willing to sell their,
The option.
yeah, there's a word, like, what's that word I'm trying to think of? But I'm assuming that must have been done in partnership with Southeast, because dollars that was sitting in that 19,000 or whatever went back to, so,
And we get credit for that.
yeah, so we need to figure out what we, there's work that needs to be done to make sure we can still have option. Should we have a industry that wants to move here?
There are some challenges for economic development for Montgomery County, but there are some opportunities as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Have
think
we heard any more from the Laotian community about the land across from West?
I met with two gentlemen right after one of our meetings a couple
Yeah.
months ago, but not since.
I think, yeah, we have to
I did see one other thing too, and I didn't know about it, was, just an email I got from, a Perry lady. Did y'all get that? Any of y'all?
Who?
A Perry lady, she said she was Pamela M. Perry.
Oh, yeah.
She was, since she had dealt with Jim, says, the role that, Carolina Complete Health will play in Medicaid, managed care, and she said she would come and, discuss it at a commissioner meeting or another meeting, but, I don't know what it's really about.
I don't know,
believe.
I ain't
I mean, that's all she says, it must be some kind of new Medicaid program that's coming out.
Yeah,
There,
they are
there
changing.
is, cause we had that presentation from Leanne Howe, was that her last name? What's Leanne's
Oh,
last
her
name?
name is-
Hogan.
What's Hogan, he was an
Okay.
age,
Does she still go by Hogan?
I
As
guess.
far as I know, she does,
But,
yeah.
she presented that to us at the last meeting, so I guess maybe that's what it
Yeah, it's part, and
Same thing.
Victoria may say something about it.
This one, she says she's the vice president of legislative affairs and governmental relations, and I guess she's out of Durham.
I don't know.
Anyway,
Yeah, Carolina Complete Care. In Durham.
you didn't get it, maybe I'll forward it to you or something, and you can take a look at it, see if there's anything that,
It could be something, Health and Human Services, switch hats.
Yeah.
something
We
like.
are really, we've met and are filling positions, with the idea that we are also losing several members who are coming to the end of their terms. But we've got really good feedback from the people we've approached in the community. What's really interesting is that the state mandates, particular types of people. The board is supposed to mirror your community, so that everyone has a voice, so it's really neat,
It is, Kelly was sharing that with me the other day.
so,
She feels real good about
yeah,
The people
it's good, really good people that are gonna be
on the
represented on the board.
advisory, health and human services advisory board.
And, we'll be presenting, Karen will be presenting to, make some changes in how we meet and how, there is reported back to the board. That's good. Good ideas.
Anybody else have anything?
Just those things, I know there's work we have to be doing about the monument based on the committee, but then based on, some of the stuff, what is even capable with.
And then there's recent developments, they indicated about some lawsuits going through the courts that could change the game for lots of folks.
Yeah, so there's just things we just need to stay abreast of some of these things so we don't.
Well, I thought it was very good, and I don't know how y'all felt.
Yeah, it's kinda nice
Like I
to
said,
talk, yeah.
maybe we can try it again next month, and we'll do it till people say, I don't need to know anymore.
And Misty,
But, I guess we need a motion to adjourn then,
Yes, sir.
so Misty can turn the hot mic on. Do I have a motion that we adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
Motion has been made by Commissioner Dawson, seconded by Commissioner Robinson, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.